fluid retention occurs in the lungs and they get short of breath, particularly with exertion. And there's a particularly condition where when lying down, they feel short of breath and have to use a lot of pillows. That's a sign that the shortness of breath might be due to heart failure.
WESN.
Good morning, Talking Point Nation. I'm Sean Michael Small. This is Talking Point in WSN, the content capital. It's an interesting morning because for some reason, this is probably the first time, I think, where I personally, I can't speak for everybody, I look at the overcast clouds and it doesn't feel like a nice, cool morning. I mean, I woke up comfortable, but the morning felt different. I don't know what it is. Normally I could tell when it's morning. I don't know how to explain it. The light hits different. The mood is just different. You know, if I'm in a indoors, blacked out room situation, then I might have difficulty, you know, identifying if I take a nap or something like that and I wake up suddenly, what time of day it is. But generally speaking, I always found that mornings had a certain mood and afternoons had a certain mood. And for whatever reason, it's the same sun, but there's something about the morning sun that just hits different to me. It's brighter, it's lighter, compared to the afternoon sun. I don't know how to explain it. And I kind of felt this morning that I couldn't tell if the sun now rose or if the sun was going to set. And perhaps it's because now I've reached the point where ask anyone who you know is in the middle of the politics in this country, who does not represent either side, who does not move, is not a ride or die with either side or any side. I hope everyone has someone, if they themselves are not neutral, they would have someone in their life who is neutral, because that would be an example of you having a diverse social circle. And it's not about what the person looks like or where they're from, but rather the fact that they have their own independent ideas. And then you yourself are able to still maintain a friendship with someone who might not agree on certain things with you that are important. So if you're not neutral, find someone who is and ask them, where does their hope lie? Because right now, I don't know. For a long time, my hope lay with certain members of both parties. And then over time, whether due to the fact that they were pushed out, kicked out, moved on, or I have concerns that they are not able to deal with the doldrums of whatever situation they find themselves in, or they have turned out to be a disappointment. I am not sure where my hope now lies. Maybe with sleeping dogs who have yet to wake up and roar at the thunder of the storms that are now overhead. right now, I don't know how to take this, to be honest. It seems as though the political games have taken a new level. Now, it all depends on your interpretation of who is the petty one, because I could see people on either side of the equation saying, either side, the other side is being petty. The last working day before Independence Day is Friday the 28th. ICNTT now has an initiative to wear yellow polo shirts to commemorate employee appreciation on the day before independence, which is nothing, it's meaningless, right? Now, then you add the claim, because I'm not in TATEC, so I don't know. I don't necessarily see why and how this could be a lie. This would be a very silly thing to lie on. So I am inclined to believe it. This is something that can be very easily disproven. Opposition Chief Whip Marvin Gonzalez, who was, of course, Minister of Public Utilities, he says this is interfering with the tradition of staff wearing the national colors ahead of Independence Day. Now, one might say the intention's not there. Marvin Gonzalez is making mischief. Others might look at the fact that, well, yes, independence colors include red, but it's not limited to red. UNC colors are yellow. Is the situation that petty? But when you're on the outside, you have to acknowledge the fact that one way or the other, it's not a good sign, because it's either someone in the government being that petty, or Mr. Gonzalez is not quite as, but still more or less petty, bringing up an issue that might not be an issue. But then it's hard to assume that it was a benign decision, because why would you need to have employee appreciation the day before, the last weekend, day before Independence Day? And if we go with the concept that apparently the tradition was they wear national colors, which could include a whole lot of white or a whole lot of black. I don't think the predominant color has to be red, but if we go with the thought that ICNTT would wear national colors ahead of Independence Day, even if you try to say it was a benign decision, I'll have a hard time believing you. And look at where we've reached. Now I'm talking about the color of the jerseys and what it might represent. But at the same time, I can't discount the fact that, in my estimation, politicians in general can be petty and foolish. And also, this will track with the fears of some with regards to how the government operates. I'm sorry, it will. And every time a UNC supporter says it's we time, feeds into that. More and more. Either way, whether it's ICNTT or someone in government going too far with stupidness, or Marvin Gonzalez going too far with an accusation, either way, it's not a good sign. But again, assuming that the tradition of wearing national colors exists, and I really can't see a reason why Marvin Gonzalez would lie on something like that and think he could get away with something so easily disproven. I am left to conclude that this yellow Polo Appreciation Day nonsense is someone's petty idea. Let's not forget, it's not that independence was cancelled last year. It was the reason given, the fact that government seemingly was only, I understand what the professionals said, but the politics, politically, government allowed their optics to basically give the impression that the only security concern they had was Independence Day, nothing else. I find it somewhat ludicrous when people say, CPL is safe, it's public. I don't care how much security it has, it's public. You fear for your life, you're going out in public. That is irresponsible, you put in public at risk on top of the principle. Because they're not going there to work, they're going there for entertainment. But anyway. But then you have to really add on the unnecessary comments about Dr. Eric Williams that had nothing to do with his job performance. You want to debate his job performance, you do that. I have never pushed back against anyone who had doubts about the actual effectiveness of Dr. Eric Williams on this show. I wasn't there. I don't have a point of view on that situation. The one thing I pushed back against is the unnecessary other type of talk. But this is where we reach. I mean, at the end of the day, there's one thing you have to hand it to the PNM. They don't make it obvious. They make it a lot less obvious if they do the same thing. If they have the same it's we time exercises. And that's just one aspect. Because I really would like to know, because I can't, it is within the realm of possibility, given how unprofessional, inept, and foolish I have seen from politicians in general, first of all, so that's both sides of the aisle, but from this specific cabinet, at this point I hesitate to even say UNC, because that will potentially disparage previous iterations of the UNC. Hell, it'll even disparage the partnership, and we all saw how that went. It's hard. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that they're this petty. But what I don't understand is, why do they think this is the play? Why? Why is this the play? Because even if the decision to wear yellow polo shirts before Independence Day was benign, if it did usurp a tradition of recognizing the nation, it looks horrible. And no offense, but in my experience, it is within the capacity of politicians to not understand when they do things that look horrible. They do not know how to analyze decisions and prevent falling into self-dug pitfalls, to incur self-inflicted wounds, and then they want to blame the public for their nonsense, when the public is merely just pointing out, and at times laughing at, the ridiculousness. And if this is much to do about nothing, and it's really being overplayed and overblown by Marvin Gonzalez, well, even with that, because I'm fine walking everything back for the most part, I ain't married to these opinions, folks. But we need to understand something. Part of the reason why this situation, these claims, these accusations, this scenario seems believable to me is all the groundwork laid by the very government itself and key figures whose over-the-top delivery of nonsense has left me disturbed at the spectacle of it all. The amateur hour political analysis, macroeconomic analysis, social analysis, public opinion analysis that leaves us in many situations that I start off saying, why don't they say anything? They need to say something, right, to get a hold of the situation. And then after they say whatever it is that they said, then I have to say, I wish they said nothing. Because nothing would still be better than what it is they said. Now, it seems as though they don't want to say anything again. But we get things like this. And there's another reason why I'm inclined to believe Marvin Gonzalez. And it's not because I have a high opinion of him or anything like that. I am merely inclined to believe him in a case like this because as the former Minister of Public Utilities, he pointed at what was going on under this administration with WASA. And they could say what they want. But when you usurp the CEO to appoint someone with no executive experience and he doesn't even last half a year, obviously the same level of judgment that led to multiple ministers having to be fired in the partnership, it might not be the same person, but the same level of judgment that was left wanting, apparently is making decisions for personnel under this administration. And that's not a good sign. It is not. I'm not going to say that the PNM is in a good place and, you know, everything that they did was benign by comparison and no, I'm not here to say that. In fact, that's one of the things that I think I need people to understand. I only compare the two parties to show that my judgment is relatively consistent. Obviously, in the different circumstances, it's not going to be exact apples to apples comparisons. But I try to apply the same logic from one party to the next, from one administration to the next, from one situation to the next. And we can grade them on a curve, and I have, to try to offer a certain level of perspective at times. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how bad the other side was. You can still be not good enough and be better than. But in this case, in some situations at least, it's not better than, it's worse than. Now, that's not to say that it's been all bad. There have been situations that I commend work being done. The immigration situation, for instance. I know firsthand that was going on for quite some time, some version of it. And it wasn't being addressed. The Coast Guard rescued a kidnapped lady. Didn't see that on the PNM, so we acknowledge that. In some ways, it's better. But overall, it's not even the policies that make me think overall things are worse. It's the communication. It's the fact that the expectations for me are not being guided, are not being managed. The communication is so deficient. And when there is communication, that too is so deficient or counterproductive that we are left with this. It's bad either that I'm talking about it and or that something like this is actually happening. It's ridiculous. This is the level of political strategy we have in this country. Not only is it potentially naked pro-party politics at the expense, literally, of patriotism, at the expense of national identity. And make no mistake, there's a further implication here. Why did they deal with CPEP? They say because of corruption. You dig down a little bit deeper, and part of the reason is expected, it is speculated, it is believed, part of the reason is, well, that's where a lot of PNM voters got their checks. And they had a dependency on a PNM government. So they would always vote PNM. So let's remove that dependency now. I mean, it is a legitimate question. How many less votes would they have gotten if it wasn't for CPEP and URP and the like? We don't know for sure. We don't know for sure, but we've heard things. But what do you think is happening now? You think the PSA is going to vote for the PNM? Or they're going to vote for the UNC? And if you think they're going to vote for the UNC because the UNC is the better government, haha, they are the better government, they are the better government for the PSA. Because what the PSA pulled off was basically potentially accepting a bribe for votes in full view of the public, because they're getting special treatment. Except maybe they weren't supposed to, because according to Minister Tanku, it could have been 0%. So, now, TNTech, you push them politically in a certain direction. At some point, it might not be difficult. It might not be difficult to push them to the point where it's a situation where they don't want to lose their job. Some of the more senior people might have been hired by the UNC, appointed by the UNC. I don't know. I haven't kept track. It might happen in the future. They will have certain incentives, potentially, or at least there will be some basic human psychological motivation at that point. And you could have said the same thing under the PNM. And this is why you're not supposed to interfere with a state entity. Because now you have the perception of politics interjecting itself. That was enough to bring the entire appointment process of the Commissioner of Police at the time after Gary Griffith's formal time as Commissioner. It brought that whole question on how it was being managed and overseen by the government into question. The perception of government impropriety interjecting itself where it didn't need to go. And this might not even be a cabinet decision. This might be some executive Yahoo wanting to show off yellow. Because this is the thing, politicians tend to copy what they see other politicians do. So if they saw that it was somewhat successful, that the PNM had certain workers dependent on them, and that's how they got votes, you don't think that another political party isn't going to try it? That somebody, it doesn't have to be whole UNC. And again, I'm now starting to not want to call them the UNC, because it will, dare I say, disparage the tradition of the UNC. Although you could say the same thing about the PNM, to be fair. This is putting party before nation. And it doesn't have to be that intentional, or that intention. But that's how it looks. And the problem is, the further you allow your public persona to be more and more ridiculous in the eyes of some, at the very least with those people, they will speculate more and more about all the little things and nitpick all the little things, and then you'll find yourself in a no-win scenario that you don't know how to dig yourself out of, because rather than having transparency and accountability as your full-time agenda, you had politics and political maneuvering and politicking and bacchanal as your full-time agenda. And you leave yourself open with too many holes for accusations to pass through and stick, whether they're true or not. And this is one of them. I think this is one of them. It doesn't have to be true. It's in line with what we've seen, to be honest. Everybody who looks at the messaging, listens to it, reads it, and takes issue with it and sarcastically interprets it moving forward will be more than willing to believe this. Everybody that hears everybody wins when UNC wins and thinks to themselves, well, that turned out to be a lie. Everybody who does that, they will be more than willing to believe this. That's the problem with that kind of slogan. You'll be held to it. You appeal to people. You give them hope. That hope could turn to entitlement and outright hate. Especially when you yourselves don't manage their expectations with the hope. You leave them to let their hope run wild. You leave them to let them think, oh, it will be, the streets will be paved with gold, and milk and honey will flow in the canals, and you just have to dig into the soil and get like 10 gold nuggets, and you could pay for whatever you need to buy that day. And people will emotionally, this is not too dissimilar to what film directors do in horror movies. This is how the movie Jaws was so successful. You don't show the shark, you let the imagination of the people make the shark into this thing that no actual image could ever compare to. This psychological, mental image of this monster that will terrify them greater than anything Steven Spielberg could have put to film. The terror of the unknown. The reverse works as well. The hope of the unknown. You see it in every sports fan at the start of every season. This will be our year, because you don't know. So everybody has hope that their team will be successful. You don't know. There have been worst to first scenarios in sports countless times. Countless times. So you let the public, the mental and psychological image of what that hope is and what that hope means, you let them craft it for themselves. Each individual, you just put the basic foundation. When UNC wins, everybody wins. You don't define what winning is. You don't define who everybody is. You just put that out there. You let them define it for themselves, and the hope they have in their hearts creates this beautiful, gigantic image of winning. It means they will be winning in life. Yes, I want that. And you sell us the dream, because even I was sold on the dream at some point. I'm not going to lie, I wanted the dream to happen. I hoped the dream was real. And then you can't live up. That's the problem. When you leave it to people to come up with their own mental and emotional and psychological image of what winning is. Don't be confused when you can't meet those expectations because you decided to not manage them. You decided to imply everything they wanted to hear. You don't even know what it is. You don't even know what it could be. It is a goalpost that you could never meet. But you used it in more than one way. You used the expectations of individuals who hoped for the best to help propel your campaign. It was smart, it was slick. The difference is a used car salesman, they get the money, that's it. No takesies, backsies. But government is different. Yeah, you get 5 years, we can't take it back now. But what happens the 5 years after? How do you maintain and sustain? And the fact of the matter is, there was some other nonsense with regards to the money that CL Financial or one of those Clico groups, owes Angostura. And I just thought to myself, this is ridiculous. For a nation that has shown that it can be excellent on the world stage in more than one way, in multiple differences, in multiple situations, we can't even manage our own affairs properly. It was like $900 million, I think, in debt to Angostura, who is now, I guess, trying to figure out how we're going to get this money. Our economy, the private sector, is in shambles. But dare I say, where we are most in shambles, where we have the greatest deficits, where we are most deficient across the board, show me one leader in this country that is great right now. I'm talking public, private, business, entrepreneurship, government, public sector, religious body, community, NGO. Maybe with the NGOs, you have some real ones holding on. But to say where's the leadership in this country right now? Right now. That's the thing, whether you like it or not. He might not have been a good leader, but he was a leader. Dr. Eric Williams, Patrick Manning. You could hate them all you want, you could love them all you want. The fact of the matter is, there was a direction, we went there. I don't see a direction now. I don't even see an attempt to try to make way. I just see substitute teachers responding to fires, some of which is by their own making, with no actual long-term plan on how to improve the situation, ensure that there's less fires in the future, ensure a road to prosperity. No one expects you to get to prosperity all in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. No, what we have right now is who wearing yellow shirts before Independence Day. That's what we have. That's what we have, for better or worse. Because this is a good part, and I very much agree with this. Former independent Senator Mirage, she's saying the political strategy using ethnicity to promote division, it's not racism, it's manufacture. Now the question is, manufactured by who? Quote, what we are seeing is not racism, but political strategy using ethnicity, which would include race and class. The fact that people are being paid to promote this division indicates that it's coming from above. For all its noise, social media is not reality. If we were to close our phones and laptops and walk out into the society and engage each other in person, we will discover how far the real TNT is from the manufactured and curated unreality of social media. Because she stated, as indicated by history, this agenda often backfired. Now, she said it backfired when put up against the lived reality of a multi-ethnic nation. She didn't necessarily, I don't think, said backfired against who. Who is the above? Who is the above that she's pointing out? And the sad part is there are too many people entrenched with their political ideologies. Their side could do no wrong. Debates are almost meaningless in 2026, by the way. We have access to more information. We're not smarter. We're not smarter. You see, here's the thing. There are things that I think are true and things that I think are false. I don't necessarily say all of it publicly because I know enough to know that I can't know if all of it is true or not. I might believe somebody over somebody else. I might believe a side over a different side, a point of view over a competing point of view, a perspective over a conflicting perspective, but that doesn't mean that I know. And a lot of people love to say, I know. You know what? What is your evidence? If you know, then you could provide evidence. You could provide a theory, a working theory of the scenario with evidence. Because usually these things are so multifaceted and far-reaching. You can't be an eyewitness. You can't be an eyewitness to what race relations are like throughout the entire country. You could witness what you have personally experienced. That is not the length and breadth, the entire scope of the entire population and how the entire population interacts with each other. You could experience multiple situations. But anecdotal experience only goes so far when you are speaking to this level. If you want to talk about which celebrity slapped which other celebrity, which celebrity was found doing drugs that ends up in the hospital, and you were there, that's all right, fine. That's a one-off. But at this scale, too many people know things that they can't prove. And they actually don't really have an idea about why it is so, but they just know. There's more information. We are not smarter. Look at the level of our political discourse. Look at the level of our education. All of this technology and advancement, are we better off? Look at where our politics has reached. We are at the whims of the stupid games of the political class. That's where it is. Literally, two groups of school children are essentially having a schoolyard argument. And that argument will determine the future of the country. That's where we reach. Schoolyard politics. Parliament is not hallowed anymore. Does anyone truly respect the work being done inside? You might respect the building. You might respect the history that it represents. Does anyone have respect for what actually goes on inside those halls? So, we live in a society where a woman apparently goes to the police, says she found a newborn baby girl abandoned in a box by a road, only to then later be identified as the infant's mother. And the police are now trying to figure out if she broke the law. I don't know what she was thinking. If she thought maybe the state would take the child in, she wanted to abandon the child, she didn't know how to do it. If that's the case, I would say, my dear, you should have maybe tried to figure out what the laws were. There has to be a better way, because you're basically lying to the police. But this is one of those weird things now, where I would just like to point out an inconvenient truth. crime is down, the state of emergency is working, and yet it seems as though the population still has the same level of disregard for the law. So while you're playing your schoolyard politics games with your fellow school children, one of the things that has been pointed out and hangs over our heads is what's going to happen when the state of emergency ends, which is a big point in favor of keeping the state of emergency. A big incentive for the government to keep the state of emergency. That doesn't mean that it's right to keep the state of emergency. And you might say, well, what do you mean? You want the murders to go out of control? I'm saying it could end next month, next year, or the next administration. If it doesn't end, there are going to be negative consequences for it. There will be. I am not fully aware what they might all be, but I would imagine engaging with international trade, getting foreign direct investment, and how we will be perceived by our friends, allies, and neighbors will all be impacted. And not in a good way. Then there's also the threat to our very own foundation of democracy. But with that said, the fact remains, whenever it ends, I have zero reason to think the murder rate cannot reach 700. Zero reason. It might peak at 700 the year after and then go back down to 6. But I have zero reason to think that it can't get to 700. Because it's not too dissimilar in my brain to what happened with automobile purchases during COVID. During COVID, nobody bought a car. And then, not too long after I started doing this show, there was a flurry, it seemed, of new car purchases. A lot of BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, hybrids, hybrid SUVs, a lot of SUVs, a lot of PEEs, PEDs, PEFs, PEGs, PEHs. Just a flurry of new cars, all relatively new cars. Because the situations that were put on pause for COVID all came to a head, all came to the fore. That's what I believe anyway. And I think that logic could be applied to the murder rate. There will be a whole crop of criminals who are biding their time, who can't wait for the day when they could settle old scores. Because the problem for them is you don't need evidence for a PDO. You just need suspicion. You just need incentive. We ain't seeing a lot of convictions coming from these detention orders. We ain't seeing even a lot of charges coming from these detention orders. They just need intelligence. Whether or not the intelligence is intelligent is besides the point. So the criminals, who are seemingly smarter than the average politician, by the way, because they actually figured out how to use intelligence and adapt to the nonsense of whatever the political people are doing. If you want to include the police executive as political people, feel free to do so. I cannot fault you if you do. They're just waiting to pop off. The detection rate for murders have not improved. The world average, yes, might be in the 20s. It's still higher than where we are right now, point number one. Point number two, that's not a good metric. That's not a good metric. In America, it's 60-something%, not 23%. That might include some countries in abysmal states, dropping that average down to too low. I mean, do you want to just be average and settle for a 23, 25, 26% media detection rate? Or do you actually want at the very least to go 50-50? I would hope that we will want to try to do the best we can and not just settle for a quarter of murders leading to suspects being arrested and charged. Because detection rate doesn't mean conviction, just by the way. It might not even mean charges, to be honest. So when we say 20% or less is the media detection rate, there's a lower rate of conviction. Yeah, that's where we reach while we're contemplating the meaning of wearing yellow polos instead of red, white, and black polos on the eve of independence, and what that could do politically for an entity like TNTech. Apparently, Star Sabga now got the leaked audio recording, now got to hear it. Here's the problem. They say, this is one report, that the leaked audio was the conversation between herself and Genevieve Hadid. That's what they say. That's what the report says. Police sources apparently confirmed in order for the reporter to write this report. Here's my issue. Here's my issue. Here's my issue with this. No minister is supposed to tell the police who to detain. But the commissioner of police said things that heavily implied he wasn't aware of this audio recording. He wasn't aware of the veracity of it, how authentic it was. Which basically means that potentially the piece of intelligence that was the basis of the PDO, somehow he wasn't aware of it. So then I have to ask, what was the burden of proof to determine whether or not, in his judgment, he sought a PDO for these people? Because part of the proof is the fact that they dropped the Hadids. Because it is heavily implied by what has been revealed to the public so far, and I do believe the leaked audio was an inside job in an attempt to change the narrative. Could be wrong, but exactly what was Dominic Hadid's role in this conspiracy, and what intelligence do they have to link him to it? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody tell me? We have potentially found the national security apparatus in this situation presenting potentially at least one lie to the public, or saying things that imply things that are technically not true. Because it's inconsistent. It doesn't add up. Because they're playing schoolyard games with people's lives. That's how it comes across. I don't care if you don't like what she said. That was a private conversation. What did she say publicly to incite anything or to commit a crime? I don't even know if she said that she wanted to do the deed. So it's a private conversation. She's speaking to someone who disagrees with her, who is trying to get her to stop. This is how they define a conspiracy. Now they might say, oh, there's other evidence. That's cute. What is it? You have successfully removed the capacity for the public to give you the benefit of the doubt. So because of your poor maneuvering in the situation, now while ordinarily you should not have the need to reveal intelligence and evidence to the public, unfortunately, I believe it is safe to say that the public does not believe you across all racial demographics, just by the way. Let's not try to turn this into something that it's not and potentially lie again, because your thin skin is not as thick as you would like to say it is, which then technically also would be a lie, just by the way. And dare I say, there was a Freudian slip that implied a certain level of bigotry. And you want to say bigotry is dependent on the ability to have power to persecute and oppress? Well, I think having someone under house arrest under flimsy pretenses is persecution. Power is an interesting dynamic and comes in many forms. And why is it, when the world has changed, do we look at power like we did back in the 1980s or the 1970s or the 1800s or the 1700s? It's similar, but not exactly the same. Power and influence feels the same, has similar flavors throughout the years, but the ingredients are different as the recipe is updated, as new technologies are introduced into the equation. New technologies, new processes, new ways of life. Life now is far different than it was when my parents were my age growing up. Apparently, the Commissioner of Police is threatening the Guardian newspaper with legal action, stating that the report that the doctor was not allowed to see Star Sabga was an untrue report because 2 days before the report was published, she was allowed to go see her. That's fine. If that's the case, Guardian should publish a retraction, a correction. Unfortunately, these things don't go as far as the headline, which to me then suggests that the retraction should be, if the story was a headline, the retraction should be a headline, a front page headline. But that's a separate debate, right? We'll see where this goes. I'll just say this, the Commissioner, similar to what I said about the government. You might be right in this case, but unfortunately, the half-truths, mistruths, falsehoods, overzealous, incorrect information, malicious, unintentional, however you want to interpret it, doesn't matter to me. The point is, you set yourself up to have people believe this about you. This is the price you pay for damaging your own reputation due to your own whatever, your own mistakes. I was going to say due to your own human failings. And that's putting it nicely. But no, due to your own mistakes, because it's not just all human deficiencies. It is an inability, again, to manage the expectations of the public. You do it. It's not spin. This is the thing. I don't know if people misunderstand. If you think you are managing expectations by utilizing PR spin in an attempt to control things forcibly, that's not what I mean. What I mean is you manage expectations by ensuring people understand the truth You have enough transparency and accountability so people could properly understand what really is going on, so their expectations are realistic. Not their expectations are what you want them to be. Not you don't think. I tell you what to think. That's not what it is. You're not skilled enough to pull that off, if that's what you thought it is. If politicians think that's what managing expectations are, that's how you deal with the public, you try to control what they think, good luck. That hasn't worked. You could influence, at times manipulate, but the public has a mind of its own. That's why politicians are routinely frustrated. Why don't they think what I want them to think? Because one way or another, they see right through the nonsense. And I really wanted to say something other than the word nonsense just now. So this is a sad reality that we find ourselves in, where even if the subject of the topic of conversation did nothing wrong, they have set themselves up in a way that their own personal reputation is damaged enough that the accusations seem plausible. And further pushes their reputation lower and lower. Now, I'll end this somewhat back where I began. I started off this day. It felt different. I could not see this rising sun. No pun intended in this case. It was the morning, but it felt like it was the setting sun. I had hope. I was willing to give all politicians the benefit of the doubt. Can you turn over a new leaf? Is my hope going to be rewarded? And so far the answer to that is, for the most part, no. But more importantly, when I look to the future and you see in the estimation that you can calculate in the moment how tall of a task it is, it begs the question, who will be the leader? And who will be the leaders behind that leader to pull us out of this? And when you see that those in leadership positions right now are too busy shooting themselves in the foot, saying the darndest things as if they are 12 years old on television, you're left wondering, how did we go from such a prosperous nation, prosperous in terms of intellect and character, to what we see today, devoid of excellence, lacking in substance, and missing any real indication of backbone. Backbone isn't being defiant and defensive and belligerent. Backbone is standing up for the right thing. If it's so right, why are the results so bad? Why does it seem so wrong? Where will our hope lie in the future? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get into the updates on what's going on in San Fernando East. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
No, I just want a man. Any man without 1 foot, 1 hand, 12 toes.
Trinidad and Tobago, the trial of the century is back. And you are the jury. After sold-out performances in the UK and Trinidad, Focus Arts Promotions is back in TNT with the explosive, hilarious, and thought-provoking stage play by Alan Charles. Why Didn't I Get Married? It's not good for man to be alone, but what about the women? In Trinidad, Central Bank, Port of Spain, Saturday 12 September, 7 p.m. and Sunday 13 September at 6 p.m. Tickets $2.25. Available at A&A Pharmacy, Port of Spain, Living Legacy Arima, Maranatha in Sando. For more info, call 768-8214. And for the first time at the Shore Park Complex in Tobago, the day before the holiday, Wednesday 23rd August, 7 p.m. Tickets $200. Available at the Gentleman Barber Spa, Coconut Cafe, and Pablo's Supermarket. For more info in Tobago, call 320-2249. Why Did I Get Married? 7 women, 1 lawsuit. Man shortage in the church? Let the bacchanal begin.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Your health matters, and the answers you need are just one conversation away. What's Up Doc is back for an exciting season 5, and we're bringing to you Trinidad and Tobago's leading medical professionals to discuss the issues that affect you and your family. From prevention and treatment to wellness and the latest medical technology. Get trusted advice, ask your questions, and stay informed. We also have an exciting new addition to the What's Up Doc family, our very own fitness instructor, Elena, who will provide easy, practical exercises you can implement in your daily routine. So don't miss What's Up Doc, Season 5, only on WESN, the content capital. Because when it comes to your health, knowledge is the best medicine.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
I'm back here and talk about the WSN, the content capital, and if I did not make myself clear, let me further clarify my stance this morning. When you see what's going on in the political landscape, I ask you, where do you see leaders that give you hope? Because leadership comes from nowhere right now. Nowhere. Unfortunately, the opposition is not ready to lead. They're not. I would have said that last month. I would have said that before the San Fernando East stuff. the San Fernando East crisis, and I do believe it's a crisis, does expose the fact that there is still things within the PNM that are unstable, unsettled, and can potentially undermine the party moving forward if and when they attempt to really make a push to win the next election. They might start that push soon, or they might start that push closer to the date at a later point. And that process might be undermined if certain things are not put in order. And I don't think that this is the be-all and end-all. This is just a symptom. Now, apparently, Mr. Brian Manning was at a meeting with the San Fernando East constituency groups, and there was some degree of positivity coming out of it. Chairman Marvin Gonzalez, he said it was a very productive, orderly meeting. We look forward to more productive sessions with San Fernando East in the coming weeks. This is what you do. This is what you say. Publicly. Privately, the ground work, the ground rule, the foundation is, listen, stop talking publicly and making a mess of things, so that then I could publicly say we are putting order back into the equation. And then you say this will be over the course of several weeks, because that's the responsible thing to say. You ain't solving it tomorrow. You ain't solving it in one go. You're not necessarily going to take a year, but you're going to give yourself enough time. This is what managing expectations kind of looks like a little bit now. You give a reasonable time frame. Expect some resolution in the coming weeks, because this is important. But we're not going to take forever, and we're not putting it on the back burner. But you say it up front. You don't say, well, it takes time after the fact, after criticisms come. When you are weeks and months into the process, well, what do you expect? It was going to happen overnight? No. Why are you all being so? Because usually you don't say things up front. In this case, the chairman said something up front. Kudos for that. That said, it doesn't answer the big questions. What exactly went wrong? Is there smoke? Does the smoke mean fire? And how will any major accusations or situations be fixed? Because right now it seems as though what they're going to potentially do is resolve the conflicts, the personal conflicts of the individuals. But are you going to exonerate? Are you going to potentially condemn? Is there anything bad going on? Apparently, apologies. PNMW leader Sanjeev Boodoo probed the issue that MP Brian Manning accused, whatever the accusations were, allegations of corruption. He found no evidence to support the allegations, but he made recommendations, including a recommendation that Brian Manning's concerns our party group verification be addressed first. That could suggest that Brian Manning overplayed his hand, or it could suggest that they're trying to save face and limit the public discourse on the situation because the concerns were real, they just don't necessarily want to admit how real. We potentially will not know. But with regards to the public communication, this is how you nip the controversy in the bud. You keep it out of the public eye. It's not necessarily the most transparent way of doing it, but it might pass, similar to how you just needed to say a basic line of the commissioner is going away on emergency leave. And then you kind of just give a basic premise of why he's going away. Or, depending on the situation, if it's a sensitive national security matter, you can potentially lie and say, personal reasons. Hint and twin wink. And at some point we'll be like, it's national security, or it actually is personal. Do we probe it further? No, because you're above board, it hits different. It doesn't seem as scummy. It doesn't seem like you're trying to pass one over our heads. It seems more like gamesmanship. It seems, whether it is really or just a matter of perception, more respectable. And it kills any momentum for speculation, or at least helps limit it. And to some degree, that's what the PNM leadership are doing. They are eroding at the momentum of the crisis. Unfortunately, you can't unring the bell, at least not for some people. Former Senator Joel Primus, he's quit the PNM apparently. He's resigned because he is saying that the party has drifted away from the values of interracial harmony, solidarity, unity, and service to the national community. That's heavy things to say. That is some heavy things to say. Because what that implies is everybody won't win the PNM either. And the timing of it, of course, couldn't be worse for the party. But for the public, now you have to ask the question again. Is there smoke? Does smoke mean fire? I mean, yes, I guess you could say there is smoke. Does smoke mean fire? Because he said this about the San Fernando East situation. He said, if you were to think of that matter is one of the examples of all the different things that I have assessed for a long time that demonstrates that the organization is not where it ought to be. It is an assessment over an extended period on how far we've moved away from some of the founding tenets and principles. And that's why he's decided to quit now. It seems as if, this is another quote, it seems as if each cycle of politics gets worse and we are further and further away from the original intent that Dr. Eric Williams had set out for the organization. And again, you might not have a high opinion of Dr. Eric Williams, but dare I say, what we see in politics now and what we saw in politics then, there might be some similarities, but dare I say, it is not the same. And part of the issues for the PNM is that they do not have unity. The UNC has unity. You can't step out of line. If you step out of line, you'll be replaced. You're a dissident, you'll be replaced. We've seen that. That has its benefits now. Don't get me wrong, it has its benefits. However, it's in hindsight, you have to, and this is with the benefit of hindsight, yes, seeing how things played out. When you look at the potential motivation of how the dissidents were treated, the potential motivation, they might have been feeling themselves too much and making a play and it didn't work, right? But when you look at the potential motivation of how the dissidents were treated, in hindsight, it's easy to say, well, I don't know why I thought the mentality would have been better in other areas of decision making. The motivating factor, the emotional background, underpinning of decisions. When you see a politician act super defensively over a period of time, over a relatively large scale issue, super defensively, and take things personally, seemingly personally, you should perhaps consider the potential of that mindset being applied to other things in other areas. The flip side is the PNM now is the opposite. They don't have someone to basically dictate the situation of the party to the party. They don't have someone to dictate control. And that, in some respects, on principle is good, but in practicality has its issues. And a strong democratic process is supposed to be able to deal with that. And people want to say that their political party is a democracy. And I'll say, yes, I know that's what it's supposed to be. But it is only allowed to do so when the individuals respect that fact. And dare I say, political leaders in recent times don't respect that fact. Now, I can't necessarily say that about Penelope Beckles, but that's because she hasn't had an iron grip on the PNM to then say that it is via her determination. So we don't know what she would do in that scenario, right? In all due respect to her, she hasn't reached that point yet that Dr. Rowley was, that the Prime Minister is in. Because we're seeing the disunity in the party. It's not shown or exposed full out, but you see the cracks. You see the cracks, you kind of hear the rumors. You see the fact that the public utterances of some members aren't always fully in line or seemingly fully in line with other members, or seems maybe a little too individualistic and opportunistic. And I don't know how the internal process of the politics, the internal politics are going to play out in the PNM. But I do know that right now, I do not like the fact that it is potentially interfering with actually doing what their job is supposed to be, which, to be fair, one could argue political parties don't actually live up to those basic expectations. But regardless, the PNM is supposed to be rebuilding right now. They're supposed to be taking their time, laying down a new foundation for what it means to be the PNM in order to rehabilitate its image, regain public trust. And all of these things take time. You could try to accelerate it, then it'll be inorganic, then the foundation will be weak, and then it will potentially be unsustainable. The rug will be pulled out from under you at any point in time because you didn't put in the work. Too many people within politics don't want to put in the work. If they don't see instant results, then they say, it's not working, and move on. No, you're the PNM. You can't afford to do that. This is not the Patriotic Front. This is not the NTA. This is not the COP. And even then, the COP put in the work. They just sabotage themselves in the end because they couldn't help themselves. Too many people bought into we time and not, it's time to do right for the nation. And what bothers me is if you are a member of the PNM and you think, without a shadow of a doubt, that only the PNM could save this country from where it is at, you should be the ones most upset with anything that might imply that your party is not getting the job done with regards to righting the ship. Because how could you say that we are the ones that are going to save the situation, that we are the ones that are going to come in and save the day, if you can't even get your house in order? Why should I believe you? You need to start putting in the work and getting those results now, because it's a slow, incremental process. And 4 years from now is the next election, and that might not be enough time. But there will be the shortcut of, if this government fails, they will be voted out, will be voted back in. Why bother? Why? Because that will be the shortcut. Your foundation will be shaky. It will be hastily built. You will be scrambling to ensure that you have a reasonable slate that the population will tolerate, not be excited over. You'll win the election if the government gets voted out. And then you will be left wondering, why isn't it that they don't accept me fully? They don't trust me. They don't give me the benefit of the doubt. They don't give me their faith. Why is it that they're so short with me? Why is it that they don't want to give me time to sort through the nonsense? Why is it that everything I say seemingly they refuse to believe? Because your foundation is far too fragile and cannot support such things. That is what's going on right now with the government. Their foundation, at the end of the day, was built off of two things. We are not the PNM, and we promise everybody is winning. Not being the PNM is not a foundation. Promising everybody is winning, that also too does not lead to a strong foundation. So, Roger Alexander more or less said it publicly. He does not understand why the public reacts certain ways that it does. The politicians in cabinet, at times, they act as though they're taken by surprise with regards to how defensive they get to public responses to things that they say and do. The Prime Minister herself, I think, does not necessarily fully understand why some people dislike the things that she does and says, which is why she pulls out the, well, they must be racist card. But we are seeing right now, a government built on a weak foundation because it was rushed. The UNC was not a strong opposition. It was a weak opposition. But they got an opportunity. And to be fair, they didn't really have a choice. They had to put a slate together quickly. They had to try to figure out something on the fly very fast, and they did so. But they made the mistake, I think, thinking that a third of the voting population is a solid enough foundation to do whatever you want and to not have to explain yourself to the public. And as I said about this government, you saw what the previous administration did. Why are you repeating some of their very same mistakes that you yourself criticized? Now is the time for the PNM to really take notes. Because heaven help me if this crop of PNM watches what's going on with this government and they themselves repeat the same mistakes about rushing into government, about relying on the fact that the population might be fed up with the current administration, about not getting their house in order, about not putting in the work to build up the faith of the people in them, the trust of the people in them. If they repeat these mistakes within 5 years, I might have an aneurysm. And of course, none of them will care. But at that point, I fear for what the population will do. And I'm not thinking about any big riots or protests. No, it's more about the fact that something like that might kill whatever is left of the spirit of what it means to be a Trinbagonian. Because it will turn the whole concept of our culture, of our history, of our people, it will make it a joke. A complete and utter joke. If we literally go from one administration to the next, where they just repeat each other's mistakes, and they descend further and further into the madness, what will be left for our population to think of ourselves? We already look at our politicians and say, they're all corrupt. We already look at our politicians and basically call out all the jokes. All of the jokers who we think are basically jokes. PNM, UNC. Does anyone have a respectable opinion on Fitzgerald Hines outside of the internal mechanisms of the PNM? I don't think so. For better or worse, I don't think so. I will defend Terence Deyalsingh with regards to COVID. I don't have enough bullets in the chamber to try to shoot down all of the criticisms for him. So And that's the PNM side. Man, I ain't going to rehash things on the government side. We'll leave that for some other date. This is the San Fernando East crisis right now. It is but one aspect. It is but one aspect. I did say there might be a way to resolve this and come out looking better moving forward. But that is but one step of many. And at this point, if you want to ask me who to vote for, I'll say this: vote for the politician that is putting in the hard work. Not, well, I appear here and I appear there and I say my little speech and I give my little slogan and I play my little song. He young, he young, he young. We come in, we come in, we come in. No, not that. Who is going to put in the work to earn the trust of each individual, one by one if necessary? I don't care what color, what emblem, what name is behind them. PNM, UNC, TPP, NTA, PF, COP, whatever. It doesn't matter. Who is the person that's going to do that, that's going to do their best to earn the trust of the people, not to cast a wide net and hope that they get some fish, but to literally go and treat with the fears and hear the hopes and the dreams of as many people as possible, to put in all the incremental hard work, day to day, grind it out. Craft a plan, listen to the people, look at the needs, craft a plan, list the priorities, figure out ways of implementation, not just give us this cheap excuse of, well, I don't have to have a plan because I'm not in government. Don't mind you want to be Minister of Finance. You end up rehashing some of the same things your predecessor did, all the while criticizing him for it when he did it. If they want to be taken seriously, the PNM, if they don't want their legacy to die, the easy thing, the less important thing, the quick and easy thing is, all right, first of all, let's not let the San Fernando East situation devolve any further. Let's not tarnish Patrick Manning's legacy in any way. Let's not risk that. That's the minor part. That's the easy part. That's the straightforward part. Now, what does it mean to be in the PNM? And here's the real thing that I think they haven't asked themselves. And the UNC is going to have to potentially face this question in the future too, when they invariably have to pick someone to succeed the current leader. Everybody wants to stand on the backs, on the shoulders of their predecessors. But forget that. Forget about it, what it meant to be in the PNM. This is one of the things that Joel Primus is saying. He's saying that they have drifted against their values. All right, fine. The founding values, we have drifted away from that. But how about, while we may keep those values, how about we define what it will mean to be a member of the PNM? And when the time comes for a new leader for the UNC, what it will mean to be a member of the UNC. Why don't you define that? Because everything is predicated on a positive view of history. And what they don't understand is not everybody views history positively. So forget about trying to stand on the shoulders of the people that came before you. You could use them as a foundation, yes, but the foundation is there. It exists in the fact that your party exists. What are you doing to say, these are the values that we choose, and this is how we're going to practice them. This is how we're going to display them. This is how we're going to live them. This is how we're going to be true to them now and in the future. Not what was done in the past by those who came before, but what you will do in the future, right now. Define that. Build that. Live that. Who to vote for? The ones that show that it's not a game. Don't tell us that it's not a game. Show us it's not a game. put in that work to show us. Everybody could say that they're patriotic. Everybody that could say that they're for the country. All right, stop talking, put your money where your mouth is, or in this case, put your decision to not take money where your mouth is. And that's a loaded statement. You could unravel all the interpretations of that one. But as long as we believe that you're not putting your money where your mouth is, rather you're too concerned with regards to how to exploit the people's money, we ain't gonna believe any value, any principle. That's the height of the mountain that you need to scale for me to believe you. And I will bet money that none of them is willing to scale that mountain. Because who am I to demand anything of them? I'll tell you who I am. One man, one vote, who just happens to be inconveniently right some of the time. And by some of the time, I mean I have yet to have a serious observation on the direction of this country and be significantly proven wrong. By my estimation, at least. When I said things were bad under the PNM, when I pointed out things that were bad, when I pointed out how things would get worse, it was what it was. And people said, why are you accusing them? Why are you not supporting them? You're only pulling them down. You're a hater. I don't know. I guess there were a lot of haters on election day last year. Or maybe my criticisms were right. I don't think my criticisms are going to be that wrong this time. So instead of trying to disagree with me on an emotional level, look into what I'm saying and others are saying. And be real with yourself. That's why I said, find someone who you know is neutral. And if you don't have anyone in your circle who is neutral, dare I say, you live in an echo chamber. You lack perspective. You lack depth. Find someone neutral and ask them, what do they think? How things are going? Where's their hope lie? If you think I'm wrong. Let's take the comment. Good morning. They're trying, but too many factions of the party sitting in the wings and waiting for a split down the middle and then to step in and save the party. The leader has to step in and take charge immediately. Mr. T. Right. That answers that question, I believe, from yesterday. It wasn't T, it's Mr. T. I pity the fool who disagrees with Mr. T. I mean, I can't disagree with this. I don't necessarily know that that is the specific motivation for sure, but it makes sense. But I'm sorry, a lot of those factions, I think too many people in the public have already determined that they are jokers, that are substitute teachers at best, that don't deserve to be lecturers or professors. They might be substitute teachers for middle school. We don't have middle schools here, but basically what I'm saying is not for examination classes. You could be a substitute teacher for Form 1s. And then now, because they lack a foundation, what they think they're doing, which is partially smart, but is not sustainably smart, they think, I'm out of the public eye. People will forget about all the rubbish I did. I will rebuild my reputation by not exposing myself. And then now, I will be someone that has less baggage than my peers. I will come in and save the day. Swoop in when things are at its roughest when the people who are exposing themselves, like the chairman, like the leader, like others, and they are allowing themselves to be criticized because they have to talk, and this is politics 101 in Trinidad and Tobago. If you talk, you'll be criticized, so to avoid criticism, it's not about being smarter, it's not about being better, you just don't talk, you just don't do anything. If I have no policies, if I have no recommendations, if I don't say nothing, I can't be criticized. I cannot be criticized for being an empty waste of time. Assuming I have no responsibilities that's going to demand things of me. That was Fitzgerald Hines' mistake, being Minister of National Security and trying to be in the background more often than not. Some of these others could be in the background, that's cute. But you yourselves were part of a defeat. You yourselves have to rebuild your own reputation. Say this, whether you like him or not, Marv Gonzalez is putting in work. Whether he succeeds or not is yet to be seen, but he's putting in work to rebuild the reputation of himself and his party. One can argue his reputation did not take as bad of a hit as others. The opposition leader is attempting to put in work to build back up her reputation and that of her party. Hans Devines, Keith Scotland, and others, they're putting in the work. Some more than others. I'm not saying it's sufficient enough, and they have yet to reach any real objective now. This is a long process. Anybody could do work for a few months. This is a long process. But those who are waiting in the wings, waiting for the party to fall apart, what are they doing? So I'm going to say this, by my own metric that I just laid out, do not trust those people. Do not trust those people. Whoever they are. I don't care who they are. Do not trust those people. Because they're doing nothing. They're doing nothing. And it's not about they're doing nothing and watching the party flounder. And there's a Chinese analogy, I won't say it. Maybe I'll use it some other day. But they're just waiting in the wings to be an opportunist. No. That's bad, but that's not the thing. It's the fact that they are not proving to us that there's more to them than the nonsense. All they are displaying is slick political used car salesman nonsense. So that foundation will not sustain any attempt of true governance of the country. It won't. The foundation that these kinds of acts will put in place are empty, hollow. They will collapse at a moment's notice. You can't trust people with that kind of foundation. You can't. You give us nothing to believe in. Why would we believe in you? The party chairman of the PNM, the political leader of the PNM, they might not succeed. The process isn't over yet. That has yet to be determined. And I say that with full objectivity. It's yet to be determined. But the fact of the matter is they are putting themselves in the... Listen, it is not easy to be in front of a camera. Trust me, I know. And you might think, oh, well, you know, you just need to be charismatic and you just need to be able to talk. No, that's not it. That's not it at all. That's part of it, yes. That's the physical, is it easy or not? What really makes it hard, at deep down in the core of what I do, of what other people like me do, what really makes it difficult is you put your opinions out there, out into the world, and the world is more than willing to attack anything they deem to be insufficient, stupid, etc., etc. You expose yourself when you speak to the public. You set yourself up. You put yourself in the line of fire. You have to be willing, able, ready to defend yourself without coming across like a bully or belligerent or dotish. You have to be capable, and you have to be capable to deal with criticism. It's not easy. You run the risk of, if anything goes wrong, of losing all your credibility. That's why waiting in the wings makes certain people a waste of time. Because to put themselves out there as a politician, it's not easy. That's why a lot of politicians in the last administration and in this administration can't find them, can't see them. Some of them say absolutely nothing that you forget they even exist most of the time. Who is the Minister of Tourism? I don't know. I don't even know where that portfolio is anymore. I barely remember that Randall Mitchell was Minister of Tourism. I barely remembered. And what about, who was the Minister of Tourism under the partnership, before the partnership, before Manning's administration, etc., etc., and so on and so on. I don't know who the Minister of Agriculture is. I can't remember who the Minister of, I could barely remember who the Minister of Agriculture was from the previous administration. And I think there were two of them. And the last one literally said just about nothing. I can't remember ever seeing him say anything in the papers. Because that's safe. But that also means that you offer us nothing to believe in. That also means that you basically have nothing to offer. Because you're more concerned about protecting your public image by not saying anything as opposed to building trust with the people. So yeah, that's why I said, you want to know who to vote for? Regardless of party, vote for the person who puts in the work. They're in front of the camera all the time. They take questions. They face difficult questions. They don't shy away from controversy. They speak well, yes, but they also have courage to stand up for something. And of course, they have to have good reasoning, logic, problem-solving skills, critical thinking, yes. But that's why, because they don't have that, they don't have the backbone, a lot of them, to stand before the public, to face the media, to take questions, to face scrutiny. They have to be willing to do all of that. Go out to the public, face the scrutiny of the public. They don't have cameras there. Deal with that. Deal with the common man who might look at you with anger or tears for your lack of representation. And figure out a way, not to get him to shut up, but figure out a way to stop him from being angry or upset with you. Figure out a way that that will never happen again. You don't have to be everything for everybody. You just have to do enough that is reasonable within the scope of your job so that people can't look at you and say you didn't try. Because with too many of these politicians, we can say, what did they do? We don't know. Did they even try? Let's open the phone lines for whatever it's worth. I've been going on for too long, but this is a different morning today. I don't know what happened. I'm telling you, I woke up, I'm walking to the studio from my car, and I just felt this doesn't feel like a sunrise, this feels like a sunset. I ain't up and at them this morning. I'm feeling down and out. Because what is the source of hope now? Who is giving us anything to believe in? The state of emergency? Minister of Defense said a state of emergency is not a crime plan. Which means that when the Prime Minister says that they have a crime plan, she needs to compare notes with her minister before her speechwriter tells her to say that nonsense. Right, I forgot, but I've been waiting on this call since yesterday. San Fernando, on the air, hopefully no problems today. Good morning.
Morning, Sean.
Morning.
I don't know what's going on with the system yesterday, but let me get back into what I was saying yesterday about San Fernando East. Mr. Manning left a void in San because he was a big, magnanimous figure. And after Mr. Manning, they brought in Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell was not somebody who I was liked within the constituency and within the structure of the San Fernando party groups. And hence the reason why his departure. And they brought in Mr. Manning's. Let me say this about Mr. Manning's son, Brian Manning. He is also not right. The people within the party groups. Because he has a standoffish type of personality. He's different from his brother, who is somebody that people like. People gravitate to, his younger brother. And Mr. Brian Manning has done nothing to try and change that image of himself within the constituent San Fernando East since 2020, since he's been the representative. He has done nothing to do that. Hence the reason why we are seeing what we are seeing now. That there is somebody in the wings, you know. I don't want to say who it is, but there is somebody in the wings waiting. That person is liked. And I am certain that if that person, and I don't see it as, let me say this one, I don't see it as a crisis, you know. This is just politics played itself within the party. Unfortunately, Mr. Manning had to come out in public and did what he did because of probably he felt he was cornered. But he has never put the work in the constituency to get the people on board on his side or get them on board with him. Because he came from a position of privilege, as people see it. He came from a position of privilege. And because of the love for his father and his mother, Mrs. Manning has a key part in getting the people on his son. That cannot play already. And he, until his attitude, he had the way out. That's what I have to say today. So you are well.
Thank you, caller. I'll say this. Everything tracks. Brian Manning seemingly was not involved in politics. I never met him when his father was alive. I met his son, his other son, David. Now, qualifications notwithstanding, I don't know if academically capability. I don't know. Accomplishments, I don't know if they're the same, if David is better than Brian, if Brian is better than David. What I do know is David was around. David was present. So he seems less of an outsider. And I would imagine Brian seems like an outsider. And when you're an outsider, you need to understand you can't just wallow being, oh my gosh, they don't accept me. No, you need to have a plan on how to try to convince people to accept you. But more important than convince, how to earn acceptance. And that's why I said, it comes back to what I said, you have to put in the work. You have to put in the work. Now, what I believe you mean when you say there's someone waiting in the wings and what the commenter meant when they said there are those waiting in the wings, I think those are two separate situations. One is waiting in the wings because there's someone in their path, potentially, while I believe the commenter might have been referring to those at senior levels who are not really helping the situation or situations, are not contributing. Because the person who you're talking about may have put in the work, may have some degree of trust toward the public. But I am afraid Brian Manning does not. But that is not a sin. The sin is not doing anything to fix it. Because that's what politics is. And if you want to be in politics, you have to learn. If you don't know it, learn it. You can't just say, that's not my thing. Well, then why are you there in the first place? because it seems as though he doesn't seem as savvy as his father. And obviously his father was involved with it on a deeper level. And he is now trying to play catch up and trying to build a foundation from scratch. And it takes effort. And if he's not willing to put any effort, then I believe you're right. It's not going to last long because it's not sustainable. I'll say this though, we have a call, but I'll say this quick. I think the timing of it all makes it a crisis. The timing makes it a crisis. I understand this could be business as usual, but it was exposed to the public, and the timing with everything going on, including where it is with regards to where the party finds itself, I think it makes it a crisis. I know we have a comment also, but we'll take the call. Katsumini line caller, good morning, you're on here.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Sean, when you see a whole heap of things there, a whole heap of things. But one of the things that I want to always tell you, you know, we just compare UNC and PNM and say they are the same. That is a the C and PNM is not the same. Okay. The other thing when I say PNM do nothing for this country. 99.9 Rachel, 99.9 are the things that done in this country, where even you and many others is on programs today, has been done by the PNM. And these are things that we need to let the population know, that these are the things that has been done by the people. Are afraid to say that, you know, Sean. They are afraid to say what is truth. But these are the facts. You understand? We have this idea that we tell people that the UNC and PNM is the same. They are not. One is a destructive party and the other one is a developing party. And if it wasn't for development in this country, many people like you and many others will not be in position today to talk to us today. You understand? It's all because of the idea of PNM. So we're trying to put in people's mind that PNM is the same. That is not. That is a blatant lie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Here's the thing. I said they are not the same, true. But at times they do some of the same things. Because there's nothing to separate them when it comes to political ideology or economic theory. There's nothing. There is nothing. What separates them is if I go left, then you go right. Or if I go left, then you go left harder. But there is nothing to say philosophically speaking, they have to be different. They differ on things like geographics, demographics, etc., etc. Now, here's the thing. You say 99.9% of things were accomplished by the PNM. All I'll say is this. All I will say is this. I am not going to say that PNM and UNC haven't accomplished things. Just because you accomplish things doesn't mean that you're not guilty of doing wrong things. But more importantly, some of the accomplishments attributed to the PNM. And this is where, if the speakers of the UNC were more eloquent, more reasonable, more realistic, maybe you would present your argument in a much better framing, and here's one way to maybe do it. The history of the country, particularly the early history, was dominated by the PNM. Some of the accomplishments technically is by default. By default. And let's not forget, PNM stewardship did not safeguard us against the situation we found ourselves in, that the NAR had to put in austerity measures to pull us out back from. So to say that 99.9%, hey, the NAR pulled us out of a situation, the PNM reaped the benefits. But some of the historical accomplishments, while I will say it is disingenuous for speakers of the UNC to make the claim that the PNM didn't do it. They did it. They were there. Don't underestimate how easy it is to miss a layup. This is to everyone else. I will say this, on some level, some of the accomplishments are under the name of the PNM because they were there. It's by default. So you can't say it was by sheer innovation that we got certain things. Some of the things we got, well, we had the money, and there was a clear need. And they showed that when push comes to shove, I think our politicians can do a good job. The problem is they are so caught up in the whole desire to enforce its we time, whether you're red or yellow. So I'm not going to say 99.9% is due to the character and genius of the PNM. I'm going to say that, yes, that was the party that was there. Some of the things probably would have happened regardless of who was there. That's just fact. Some of the things, it might have been handled worse off, but it would have still happened. Right? I can't say that COVID would have been worse under the UNC. I don't know that for sure. It might have, but at the end of the day, they would have still had to deal with it. And to be fair, how do you judge a situation like that when it's difficult to judge a situation like that when it is unprecedented? I say that the initial response was good based on what I've seen with other initial responses to COVID. Not everybody shares that opinion. I could defend it as much as I want. Not everybody shares that opinion. So it's very complex when you want to now make the determination of, you know, how do you attribute past success of a nation? If it was the case that the PNM had a lot of decisions that nobody believed in, but they did it and it worked spectacularly, that would be an obvious sign of, yes, by their genius, we are prosperous now. But there will be certain decisions that would have been self-evident that you would have just done, right? The labels might have been different. And yes, the flip side is you can't say that for everything because, again, history has shown human beings could mess up an easy layup. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. So there will be certain accomplishments where it might look as though it was easy and simple, but you do have to give the PNM credit, hey, they were able to see it through. It's not always that simple to make every layup now, right? So when you put those things together, while I'm not going to say that the PNM's time was rubbish, I can't say 99.9%. And at some point now, that's the past. Those were them. Even if you want to make that claim, I'm talking about now. I'm talking about what are you going to do? With regards to the PNM, it's not now, you're the opposition now. What are you going to do in the future? Show me that. Forget about the past. The past is the past. Dr. Eric Williams and Patrick Manning ain't going to come to right the ship in 2026. We have Dabity on the line. Caller, good morning, you're on the air. Caller, good morning.
Are you John? Morning.
Morning.
Wonderful program as usual. And I am red. I respect a lot of your viewpoints this morning. And you are a very young, knowledgeable person. You have had experience of probably going to school in North America as I did.
I don't actually. I don't.
Maybe older and a little more experience than you. Mm-hmm. I've been in the politics for over, I'm not hearing you though, but I have a little rain up on this side. I am telling you that I want to believe that the whole thing about politicking and electioneering is being evolved. And the viewpoint of young people, our politicians, the older ones, should start being accurate with the way young people think today in order to be successful. And I think is that what might be creating some problems. That distance between age and youth, and actually being able to accept, Sean, how the whole politicking and the environment of politics is being changed, you know? So we are baby boomer, and maybe some of the folks, some of my peers and those older than me, must realize and accept that things are being evolved and we have to get with the time. I cannot get deep into this conversation with San Fernando East for several reasons, but I do appreciate the viewpoint you're bringing this morning. So you have a nice day, and thanks again for the contribution you're making this morning, Sean.
Thank you, caller. I'll say this. I actually did not go to school in North America. I have not lived any significant amount of time. I've only visited. The longest was, I think, 3 weeks, in Canada for World Youth Day. And I went with the Love Movement. They also went for that World Youth Day. And we also had concerts in Canada, both for World Youth Day and outside of World Youth Day. That was in 2002, summer 2002, I think. So I went to Roy Tech. I got my first degree there. There is some, I guess you could say, North American influence. Part of it, though, I would say, is the excellence of the lecturers, the local lecturers, many of whom were working professionals in Roy Tech, right? And that is both when I first started in the early to mid 2000s and when I actually finished around 2012, 2013, 2014. Particularly in that latter period, I could speak stronger too. But I know that they were good lecturers all throughout, right? They really do take that seriously. And then I've also gone to Costat at the Ken Gordon School of Journalism. A lot of great lecturers there. The whole COVID online thing has really thrown me for a loop, to be honest. And that's the main issue I have with that. I feel too disconnected. So I've never gone to school in North America. What I do, however, is I have my ear to the ground on a lot of American politics, pop culture, entertainment industry stuff, news, etc., etc. I don't necessarily like to follow the politics on a day-to-day basis because I find even for the people who I technically agree with at times, how they present their arguments, I understand. I myself get a little bombastic and excited and emotional, but you have to be careful to not come off seeming biased or having an emotional bias, and they don't always succeed, at least with me. And these are the people who I agree with, much as the ones I disagree with, right? My analytical skills are based more on that. My historical knowledge of Trinidad and Tobago, while there is some, it is limited, right? So, with regards to what you said, I'll say this quickly because we have a caller. We need either new leaders to show us the new way forward, or the population has to evolve on its own. Regardless, how we operate now ain't working, because the voting patterns, I would argue, does not display a healthy, successful democracy. But that's my opinion. And at the end of the day, we can complain about the politicians all we want. If there's weakness in the voting population and the judgment of the voters, then it will be an uphill battle to get better politicians, or to get politicians to be better. We have a money line. Caller, good morning, you're on here.
So Michael Small, good morning to you and Talking Point Nation.
Morning, morning.
Morning. I want to correct a statement that you made earlier. When you said that we are not smart, I want to disagree. But I will say this: we are smart, but we are not clever. Okay? And I'll give you one stupid example. This yellow jersey talk with Marvin Gonzalez and TNTech workers. Right now in my village here, there's an entire street that none of the street lights working. And what I've been noticing, I don't know if it's a Arima thing where they're trying to spite us, but in several places in Arima, we don't have functioning street lights. They were functioning, but they're not functioning now. And TNTech is not paying any attention to that. So to come on the television and to tell people, well, you know, that yellow ain't good because you're pushing a party agenda. We don't care if it's yellow, red, green, blue, purple. We want the street lights. And you see, this is where a difference. Because you ask yourself, how many of our politicians are really on the national interest and on improving the welfare of the citizens? How many of them really are? So that's why Brian Manning in his debacle there, because you know, it's more about ego and the self and me, more than the people who you represent. Good program as usual, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, to be fair, it's not his responsibility to say about that now. However, I know of a similar situation on Cobblins Avenue, where I think it's been years. I really have been counting. You know, it's not like I drive past there most nights and I say, oh, still not up, you know, 476 days or whatever. But I think it might be 1 to 2 years. I think it might be well before the election, right? And this is basically just before Cascade. So this should be, I believe, Stuart Young's constituency. Now again, MPs, technically, it's not their direct responsibility, right? They have informal things they could do to treat with the situation, but it's not their direct responsibility. But no, so if you want to say that, you know, Mr. Gonzalez had a responsibility and this problem existed back then when he had it, fine. But right now, if you're saying this is a right now situation, it's really on the current minister and the current TNTech executive. But I understand that, yes, this shouldn't be that important. Unfortunately, the pettiness of the politics, given the current climate, kind of still makes it important. But your point should be more important. Your point should be the priority, and it's not. And I think part of it is, who are the leaders that taught the current crop of politicians? Because, dare I say this, you might think Dr. Rowley was good or bad, but what I believe to be true is the fact that he was unable to impart onto Stuart Young what Stuart Young needed. And what Stuart Young took from the example of Dr. Rowley was things that he should not have took, because they were things that were intrinsic and unique and specific to Dr. Rowley and had nothing to do with a Stuart Young. Because Dr. Rowley is Dr. Rowley and Stuart Young is Stuart Young. And that's not why people believed in Stuart Young when he first went into politics. That is not the persona that impressed people, that people would have put stock and faith in. It is not. And I don't know if young politicians are learning how and what to do the right way. Marv Gonzalez has shown me things. Other politicians, some behind the scenes, have shown me things. Some former UNC senators have shown me things. But too many show me nothing. And it implies that they are incentivized to be more in the bacchanal and bubble. And that's what they think politics is. And Stuart Young, on some level, thought this is what it means now to be leader. I have to be emotionally identifiable as being on the level of my supporters, when the fact of the matter is they didn't need just another guy with the emotional range of just another guy to be the leader. They needed a leader. You could agree with the public, but you don't have to limit yourself to be just another guy amongst the public. Then why choose you to be leader? And I feel as though the wrong thing is being learned by politicians. And that's why too many of them say things to the effect of they don't understand the public. They don't understand what the public wants. And yes, there's a part of that where even if you had a strong understanding, you'll still be thrown for a loop because it's hard. It's not easy, it's hard. But too many of them really don't have a clue. And then you have those like Roger Alexander, who you throw to the wolves, and all my criticisms for him notwithstanding, he has been technically thrown to the wolves. He has technically, whether he realizes or not, has been put in an unfair situation. He does not help himself, but on some level, it is not totally his fault. Who is there to lead and guide him? Minister Sturge? The Minister of Justice? The AG? None of them seemingly have that capacity, really and truly. Maybe he doesn't want guidance. That could be true too. But you should have known all of these things when you selected him to be an MP and a minister. Former police officer, popular. Natural minister. No, no, that's natural for votes. That's natural for polling. That's natural for optics. That's not natural, or that's not going to naturally lead to job performance. And job performance doesn't just mean how hard you could be on criminals. Job performance means how well you could show leadership for the nation in this national role. Let's take the comments and close out the show. Run out of time. Have you considered how the PNM treats its own who raise matters of importance, including allegations of corruption within the PNM? Yes, I have. We just haven't necessarily seen it like how we saw with the UNC's dissidents. The divisions of the PNM are different. I would argue you don't really have this that often. Think about, in recent times, think about our past sons like CLR James, Iana Robinson, Carl Hudson Phillips, Stokely Carmichael, among a range of critical thinkers whom Dr. Eric Williams destroyed because they wanted a better TNT. This PNM is doing the same destruction of its own today. What's left for us? I mean, I don't think Dr. Eric Williams successfully destroyed Iana Robinson. One could argue, what would you say with regards to the Prime Minister and Michaela Pandey? Not that I'm saying Michaela Pandey is the second coming of anything, but the criticisms of the Prime Minister is not utilizing the most accurate or pertinent criticisms of Michaela Pandey, in my opinion, but rather seem more of a personal nature that is of questionable significance to a national conversation. When in reality, they are legitimate things you can't criticize Michaela Pandey for, and utilize as arguments to say that she may not be the most suitable to be in the UNC, at the very least under Kamala Persad-Bissessar. But let me not go any further with that. Comment ends with, we need to know our nation's post-independence history if we are to successfully move forward. You know, here's my issue. I think we know it too well. I'm sorry. You have two types of people. Those who are ignorant of the past and repeat the same mistakes, and those who are trapped by the past and repeat mistakes because of it. That's my opinion. I think its we time is in part borne by the continuing emotional baggage of our post-independence history. I think the PNM are stuck in the past of our post-independent history. I think negativity from the PNM and the UNC, some of the negative aspects of both parties for different reasons, are due to being too aware of our post-independence history. And then a lot of the rest of the negatives comes from those who are Johnny-come-latelys, never-see-come-sees, who have no perspective. No one is actually learning from the past in order to not make the mistakes of the past, to not repeat them. No one is actually doing that. You want to tell me that only Dr. Eric Williams did those things? Really? Right now, all I can say about the PNM is this. There's not that many dissidents with regards to corruption within the PNM, because that's not the fracturing lines of the PNM. PNM is operating in a very different space than the UNC. You had that within the UNC, because the UNC tried to parcel itself a certain way. So people flocked to the UNC based on that framing, based on that publicity, that PR messaging, found out that it might not be quite what they thought it to be, and then left. PNM is different. It's a political animal. Everybody knows it. And they're framing themselves a little bit different, and it's keeping that, for the most part, in-house. And they all agree to keep it in-house. So how they deal with their own is different. And the debate with regards to what's going on in San Fernando East is different. I do not know if the allegations of corruption, if there's merited or not. So I can't say, look at how they're treating Brian Manning because of this. It might be, it might not be. They might be trying to save face and cover things up. There might be nothing there, and Mr. Manning went too far on an issue that is not significant enough. I don't know. What I will say is this. Those that remember the post-independence history, they seemingly might be trapped by it. Because again, I said earlier, whatever was accomplished back then was accomplishments of those who were there back then. They are not here now. So stop trying to prop yourself up off of past accomplishments. The flip side is true as well. I understand that we want to judge the successors on the predecessors. I understand that. But we will never, never be able to achieve anything if we assume that the successors are the same. And I would argue they are not. They have their own sins. They make their own mistakes. Particularly with the PNM. The PNM's issue is, for the most part, they make their own mistakes. Some of it might be repeating mistakes of the past, but they make their own mistakes. So we can't necessarily hold the past actions of other men and women against this crop. You have to judge them based on what they do. Penelope Beckles will be judged by what Penelope Beckles does, not what Dr. Eric Williams did. Do we judge Clinton based on what Nixon did? Do we judge Obama based on what the founders of the Klan did? Do we judge George Bush Jr. based on what his father did? Do we give current Republicans a pass based off of what Reagan did? No, we judge them on their individual merits. We don't look at what Thatcher did and say, well, her party is this or her party is that now. They are judged by what they do now. We don't judge Kamala Persad-Bissessar on what Basdeo Pandey did, because by her own words, there were issues with what Basdeo Pandey did. She said she got nepotism out of the UNC. Yes, they use their past for clout, but they commit their own sins. They have their own agendas. They have their own faults. It is more important to find out what those are than to just use past history to put oversimplified labels on the present. Because at the end of the day, I will end where I started, or at least with one of the points I have said before. It's not about what happened in the past anymore. We have to look to the future. Who is proving to be able to build things the hard way, from scratch if necessary, for the future? What was past is the past. I'm not going to use past success to assume future success. I'm not going to use past failure to assume future failure. I want to see what you're about, what you're going to do. What have you done for me lately? What can you do for your country? Not what the country's treasury could do for you. Show me that. Show me something to believe in. Ball is theirs. The ball is yours. Politicians and voters. At the end of the day, that's the equation. Stop trying to point fingers at everybody else. Start affecting what you can affect. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe. Don't forget it's nice to be nice. Thanks to all the callers and commenters. Hopefully we'll see you all, everybody, tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
And welcome back to Dollars and Cents. Now, in this episode, I would like to talk about a topic that is very dear to me, the topic of financial literacy. And I am of the firm belief that financial literacy is not spoken enough in the school system. And as a result, you know the old adage in Trinidad and Tobago, you go to school, do good in school, get a good job, and then basically that's the end of most of the guidance that you will get from parents and the persons who are guiding you as a child moving forward. And after this, you get a job or a stable job in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, in most cases, when people say a stable job, it's either a government job, or if it is one of the four big professions: engineer, doctor, lawyer, and where's the next one? Where's the next one? Engineer.
Doctor, lawyer, engineer is only be three sometimes.
Right. Engineer, doctor, lawyer. Right. And when it is you get those jobs, essentially that's the end of your guidance, and you basically get to figure life out afterwards, right? Today I have a guest, Jared West Mitchell, and we'll be